So thank you, the panelists who've been waiting for us, have joined and are waiting for the audience. And thank you everyone everywhere in Israel and the US. I know we have a couple of people from Europe, everybody from joining us. It's an amazing, amazing turnout for what's going to be a very interesting webinar with Israeli baseball, about Israeli baseball. I'm Tammy Benheim. I'm the Minister of Public Diplomacy here at the Embassy of Israel. And we're all very excited and have been excited for weeks and really looking forward to this event. We all know that the Israel baseball team was scheduled to compete in the Olympics. And actually, you know, we're talking, had it been normal times and not COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're going through, we all would have been watching the team play in Tokyo for the 2020 Olympics, which have been now been postponed, hopefully for next year. We won't know, but it's the first time, if I remember correctly, right, since 1976 that Israel had a full team and not an individual sports in the Olympics. So thank you guys on the panelists for being here. And I won't take you so long, but I just would like to introduce our ambassador, Ambassador Ron Dermer. And I think he can definitely be counted as one of the team's earliest and biggest super fans. He's been following them, and we're excited to hear from him and see what he has to say to open our discussion today. So without further ado, Ambassador Dermer.
Thanks, Tammy, and everyone joining in. I'm speaking to you from the Golda Room, as you can see from behind my shoulder, on a print, I think, from Andy Warhol that's probably worth more than this whole building. In the Golda Room at the Israeli Embassy in Washington. It's a pleasure to be here and get an opportunity to talk about the real challenges facing Israel and the real important issues facing Israel, which is how our baseball team is going to win the gold medal. As Tammy said, the Olympics were postponed. Most people attribute that to Corona. They don't know that the real story was just really a desperate attempt to prevent our team from winning the gold medal. That's what I think it's all about. So we'll see if I'm right in next year in 2021. The good news for me is that I will have a chance to actually go in person to the Olympics next year. I hope to make it there and to watch our team because, as Tammy said, it's the first time in 44 years, it'll be 45 years then, that Israel has an Olympic team to represent the state. And I think that that's truly a special. I want to thank all of the players. I see some of them here, coaches as well. Peter, I see there in the background, and everybody who's been involved with this team and has really put a lot of time and effort in making this happen, and also seeing how the team has developed from year to year, where no one gave them any chance whatsoever 3 or 4 years ago. And then step by step, they really did something truly remarkable, and they will be competing, as you said, next year. I think there are only 6 teams. I'm not even sure if all 6 teams have been chosen because I think that COVID has sort of, there's still sort of 2 that are open. So maybe we can make sure that those teams don't come. So we'll be down to 4, which will give us probably a 75% chance of winning a medal rather than a 50% chance. I had an opportunity to meet with 2 of the players, I think, who came to the embassy, Jonathan, who I see there, and Nate as well. So it's good to see you again. And I also know that I think it was several months ago at this point, a half a year, was it, when the team came, or was it over a year ago, the first time that many of the players had been to Israel? Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm losing a little bit my sense of time because of COVID. But I know that many of the players made their first trip to Israel when the team came as a team to Israel. And I know that I've spoken to some of them, some of you, and you said you were really impacted by coming to Israel for the first time and what it meant for you. And I have no doubt that when you compete in Japan, you will have an impact on people within Israel, and also, I think, pro-Israel communities, Jews and non-Jews all over the world. I can tell you my personal experience briefly in Israel. I'm a baseball fan. I've always been a baseball fan. I think you have to become a baseball fan as a kid in order to be a baseball fan as an adult. I have encountered many people who come and I will take them to ball games with me. It's hard once they reach a certain age. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because you really have to understand the game and appreciate the pace of the game and all the strategy that goes into the game and all these little details. And if you grow up with it, I think it just bonds in you at a very early age and stays with you throughout the rest of your life. And I remember in Israel, soon after I left the Prime Minister's office and before I came to Washington, I had a kind of few months there, and I used to take my kids out with me to play baseball in Israel. We actually had wiffle ball because they were very young at the time, maybe it's about 7, 6, and 5 at the time. And I took them out. Every Saturday we'd go, there's not a lot of baseball fields in Israel. We would go to a basketball court, and we had bases, which I had gotten, and we turned that into a little baseball diamond. And what was fascinating to me, I would play with my 3 boys, and at first it was just the 4 of us, kind of playing a 2-on-2 wiffle ball game, which all of you probably played when you were little kids or something. And then it expanded to 8. And then we would start getting crowds of kids trying to understand this fascinating game. And pretty soon we had full teams, 2 teams, and about 20 people watching in the heart of Jerusalem. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like when you take the field representing Israel next year in Japan. And beyond that, I think that all of the players will have the opportunity, I think, to instill pride in people throughout Israel and in Jews throughout the world. And we have seen many events that have happened that have instilled our people with pride. In 1948, when Israel was established, that was one of those events where Israel transformed from being a stateless, powerless people into a proud sovereign nation. In 1967, when Israel won the Six-Day War, that sort of unleashed pride among Jews throughout the world that we were victorious against seemingly impossible odds on the battlefield. We know that had a big impact on the Jews, for instance, in the former Soviet Union when Israel won in the Six-Day War. And in sports, the most famous was probably when Maccabi won the basketball championship in the mid-'70s. That was Israel's kind of "do you believe in miracles" moment. But I think Tal Brody said at that point, he said Israel is finally on the map. And I'm confident that this team will do that. I know it's under the radar screen. There's a few other issues that people are focusing on in Israel. But I think when you guys all take the field with the blue and white, I think that it will capture the imagination of many, many people, and I look forward to watching it. And I also look forward to having you guys win. So I'm a believer that you guys are actually win the gold. And I know if you win the gold, then you're going to see a sea change. Because I can tell you, before 2016, I knew exactly 2 Chicago Cubs fans. And I was born and raised in the United States. You couldn't find a Chicago Cubs fan anywhere. And all of a sudden, they win the World Series, and the next day, there were conversions across the nation. All of a sudden, everybody dons the Cubs jerseys and the Cubs hats and the Cubs uniforms, and Cubs Nation was born. So the truth is that people follow winners, and I think as you have won, you have seen that as more and more people are interested in what you're doing. And I have no doubt that you will continue to do that next year and represent Israel well. I've had, as I said, the opportunity to meet a couple of the people associated with their team and to see their character. And I just hope and pray that the Cinderella story of Israel's baseball team continues. And I am confident that you will be a great source of pride for the people of Israel and for Jews and pro-Israel supporters around the world. And I want to thank you for joining us today for this webinar. And then we'll talk about important things like baseball and not all the other issues that I get to speak about every day. But thank you for making me a part of this, Tammy. And I look forward to listening.
Very good. Thank you, Ambassador Dermer. Thank you. We appreciate that. We appreciate it, Tammy, to be here with the Israeli Embassy on this webinar. And I'm honored to tell the story of Israeli baseball. And I hope you do become the ambassador to Japan so you can be with us there 1 year from now as well. Yes, there is baseball in Israel. And it's pretty good baseball. It's not bad at all. I've been living there for 30 years now, originally from New York. And I've been involved with the IAB, the Israel Association of Baseball, for over 25 years as the president and secretary general, and right now as the general manager of Olympic Team Israel. The IAB is a nonprofit organization. We run baseball in Israel. There's over 1,000 kids playing baseball in Israel, from Beersheba in the south to Misgaf in the north. We have an academy where the best players play in the Baptist Village in Petach Tikva, which is our main field. It's like a high school kind of field with lights. It's the only lit field in Israel until now. We also have a program called Baseball Likulam, which is our attempt to bring Arab kids and Jewish kids together on the baseball field. It's our little contribution to coexistence in Israel. And we also send national teams overseas. And the proudest of the U18 team, who last year won the European Championship B pool. And those are all kids who grew up in Israel, grew up in the program in Israel, are graduates of the academy, and we're very proud of what they accomplished. We also build fields in Israel with the support of the JNF of Project Baseball. We're now starting a field in Beit Shemesh. It's the first phase of $1 million donation that the JNF has given us. We're also starting a field in Renana, and we also have a good opportunity to do a field in Tel Aviv and expand the field in Tel Aviv and put up lights. It's in the Sport Tech, which is sort of like the Central Park of Israel, of Tel Aviv. And all these fields are important for the future growth of baseball in Israel because the adage, if you build it, they will come, is completely true. And kids are coming out, and they're coming out more, and they're being out there more. But the main reason you're all here is to hear about our success on the international front. And I'll just try to give some background and provide some kind of context of how it all began, and explain a little bit about why it's so important for these American Jewish ball players to be able to come to Israel to make Aliyah, and how proud the Jewish community is. We're trying to do things that resonate with the Jewish youth all over the world, and one of these things is to make them proud of their Jewish heritage. We actually started in 2007 this whole international thing with the IBL, the Israel Baseball League. It was a league of a summer. There were 6 teams, 120 players. It was a great summer of baseball. There were coaches, managers like Art Shamsky and Ken Holtzman came to Israel to manage teams. Unfortunately, they went bankrupt after that season, but it left a legacy still today. There's even 2 guys here on this call, on the panel, who were playing in that league, Eric Holtz and Shlomo Lipitz, and there are many other people who are with us now, who are with us today because of that. Go fast forward to the WBC tournaments in 2012, 2016, and 2017. MLB invited Team Israel to come to these tournaments. Because of the heritage rule, we were able to get players like Brad Ausmus, Sean Green, Jason Marquis, Sam Fold to play for Team Israel. Guys who we're still in contact with today. Sam Fold will be the manager of the WBC team when the WBC comes, the next one. In 2017, ESPN called us the Jamaican bobsled team because they didn't believe us. We were the 16th team out of 16 teams to qualify. We won the first 3 games in Korea. We went on to Japan. We beat Cuba. Israel beat Cuba in baseball. In the end, we landed a little bit, came down to earth, came in 6th place out of 16 teams, and Israel baseball was on the international baseball map. There was no doubt about it. In 2017, I had 2 teams. I had the national team, the Israel national team, which was competing in European tournaments, made of Israeli nationals, passport holders. We were mediocre there in the B pool of European tournaments. And I had this team of American Jews who played for Team Israel, who proudly wore the blue and white and wanted to do more. So in 2017, the WBSC, the World Federation of Baseball, announced that baseball would be coming back to the Olympics in 2020 in Tokyo. And they announced exactly what the direction would be, the qualifying direction would be to get there. I put together a roadmap. I sat together with Eric Holtz in New York in 2017. I remember it like yesterday. He listened to my whole spiel, and he said to me, "You're crazy, but I'm with you." And other guys came with us, and in 2018, 10 guys made Aliyah to Israel, including 2 of the guys in this picture here. 10 guys, 5 guys from our WBC team. In 2019, 4 more guys made Aliyah and came to Israel. And in June of 2019, we went to Bulgaria to play in the European Championship, the B pool. Bulgaria is not exactly a hotbed of baseball in Europe, but we won. We went 6-0. We won. 3 weeks later, we went to Lithuania to play in the B pool playoff there, and we beat them. And then 6 weeks later, we had to go to Germany to play in the European Championship A pool. That was a very emotional kind of time. Many of our players have grandparents who are Holocaust survivors. My own parents are Holocaust survivors. To go play in Germany was a very emotional kind of thing. Before that tournament, we added a few more players with Major League Baseball pedigrees. One of them is Danny Valencia down there who's swinging the bat. He came to Israel. He made Aliyah. John Moscott also came to the team. Ty Kelly we added to the team as well. In Germany, we had to come out the top 5, one of the top 5, in order to go to the Olympic qualifiers the following week. We came in 4th place. We won the games we had to win. The following week, we went to Italy. We played in the African European Olympic qualifiers. In the first 3 games, We beat the number 1, number 2 team, and number 3 team of Europe. The ones who had just a week before come in the first 3 places. So we defeated Spain, we defeated the Netherlands, and we defeated Italy. And after defeating South Africa in the final game, we were Olympians. And Team Israel was making it to the Olympics. And that was an incredible event. It was fantastic to be there. And as Tammy said before, it's the first time there's been a team sport for Israel in the Olympics in 44 years, since 1976. Since then, we've added a few more players. We've added Ryan Lavon, who was our MVP in Korea in 2017. By the way, he's appearing tonight in a game against the Baltimore Orioles. Him and Richard Blyer are both on the squad of the Marlins, and they'll be on the 30-man squad. They'll be at the game tonight with the Baltimore Orioles. In addition to that, we also added a guy who retired from MLB after a 14-year career, 4 times an All-Star, Ian Kinsler. He came to Israel in March, 4 hours before the coronavirus shut down the whole country, came to Israel, made Aliyah, became an Israeli citizen, and he's a part of the team. Why is it so important for the Jewish community in Israel and the U.S.? First of all, in Israel, as the ambassador said, winning the Olympics or getting a medal in the Olympics will be huge. It'll be something incredible. Everybody in Israel knows who won the 9 Olympic medals of Israeli sportsmen. They're all 9 individual medals. There has not yet been a team medal. And the baseball team will win a medal in the Olympics next year. That's guaranteed. The second thing we're doing is building the fields. Having the medal and building the fields together will enable us to double and triple the number of players playing ball in Israel. We're looking to have about 3,000 players by 2022. But even more important is our goal to engage Jewish youth everywhere in the world, be they in Israel or in America, make them feel a sense of pride of this team. Having the American Olim come to Israel to join their Israeli brothers, to be together, to be able to make a team that can compete internationally. We're competing internationally against the biggest powers there. It's a very important message. Don't forget, there are maybe 15 million Jews all over the world. About 8 million in Israel, another 7 or 8 million in America, another 500,000 elsewhere in the world. So we're 15 million people. We're playing against Korea, South Korea, who has 52 million people in South Korea only. We're playing against Mexico, where there's 125 million people. And we're playing against Japan, where there's 130 million people. Not to mention the 2 additional countries that have to come there. So we're truly underdogs. These are our competitors, and we're going to win. We're going to do really well. We're going to win there. And that's where we need the help of donors to help the team get to Tokyo, to help build the fields in Israel. Later on, we'll be showing there's the site where people can donate, but we're really looking to help us to do what everybody wants to do. Before we turn to our panel and moderator, John Weinbach, let's take a look at the final out versus South Africa that brought Team Israel to the Olympics. Shlomo Lipitz on the mound. Oh, this is not that. These are some highlights from the game. There's Benji Wanger scoring. Okay. Jonathan,
creative.
please.
Thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar. Just for full disclosure, I'm John Weinbach. I'm the executive producer of Mandalay Sports Media in LA. And more germane to this conversation, baseball fanatic. Played high school baseball here in LA. Actually, one of our panelists, John Moscott, I believe he went to Pali. I went to Beverly Hills High School, different sections, but played at that high school a couple of times. And actually, as the ambassador was talking about Maccabi Tel Aviv's famous victory. I produced a film called On the Map, all about that victory with a great Israeli director named Danny Menken, and it is sort of one of the great underdog stories. I'll jump right into this. I mean, it is really, where I sit, we're all about telling stories that kind of jump from the sports page to the front page. Things that have human interest and have import sort of beyond the sport. And when I think of this team, just in terms of baseball and at the Olympics, I don't know if some of you guys may be aware or people watching the 2000 U.S. Olympic baseball team, which kind of was this team of misfits that ended up being coached by Tommy Lasorda, and they ended up winning the gold medal at the Sydney Olympics. It's a great story, and feels like some of the parts here are aligned for that kind of run as well. And let me just start. I guess I'll start with Danny Valencia. I think you're and certainly one of the guys with the most, if not the most, aside from Ian Kinsler, Major League Baseball experience. And you are, my Jewish friends from Miami would say, a Cuban, Jewish and Cuban from Miami. How did you, give us a little bit of background on sort of how you came to this project at all. Did you know Israel had a baseball team? Had you ever thought about international competition? Tell us a little bit of how you came to the team.
Well, I think, Peter, I've spoken with Peter years past about possibly playing some of the qualifiers. I think 2012 may have been one, 16. We've had, brief conversations. I also had brief conversations with Brad Osmus and Jerry Weinstein in regards to their classic teams. But at those times, I was never.
Did we lose Danny?
Froze.
A little bit.
Froze up.
Daniel, give us the thumbs up when he can come back. But I'll just jump in real quickly. I mean, one of the interesting things, just as a baseball fanatic and as a Jew from Los Angeles, it does seem like we're in a little bit of a golden era for Jews in baseball, in Major League Baseball. You got Jock Peterson, Alex Bregman, and Kevin. I'm going to forget his last name, Pilar from the outfielder, and obviously all the guys assembled here. John Moscott, do you sense that at all in terms of the fraternity of Jewish baseball players? I mean, you played minor league ball with the Reds. Has there been, and obviously it made it to the majors with the Reds, how sort of much of a fraternity of Jewish baseball players are there? Is there, you guys sort of in touch with one another?
Well, I think first and foremost, that fraternity is coming, I think, more to fruition now because of the success of Team Israel, whether it be in the World Baseball Classic or in the Olympics. More and more guys are willing to say, hey, you know what? Like, these are my roots. I'm proud of them. I'm ready to kind of roll out and represent for Israel, and whether it's in the World Baseball Classic or in the Olympics. And playing with guys, when you walk into a clubhouse, it's not that often that you go, hey, yeah, what temple do you go to, And so when you do have one of those conversations with a guy, it ends up kind of resonating, and it's fun to talk about, and you do have a deeper bond, right? So the fraternity is real. I think everybody feels it. And I think, honestly, that's why our team has had as much success as we've had, right? We've all played here on teams that have maybe more overall talent, but our team, we have a special bond together, right? We have something deeper than just what the name on the back of our jerseys, right? And that's what's on the front. And I think that that's carried us a long way, and I think that it's going to continue to carry us through next year and moving forward as a team.
Danny, sorry, I don't know if you're still there. I know you got some technical difficulties, but that's okay. I didn't want to cut you off. I wanted to say, as the guy, again, especially when you joined the team, probably with the most Major League Baseball experience in the show. How, when you came to this team, did you speak with Eric about, hey, what your role was going to be? Did you feel like, hey, maybe I'm not going to be taken as seriously by my Major League compatriots because I'm playing for Team Israel? What was that kind of like?
Everybody most of my teammates, my ex-teammates or friends that I played with, they were like super supportive, thought it was the coolest thing in the world to be able to play in the Olympics, or at least chase the dream of being able to play in the Olympics. I didn't know really anything to expect. I didn't know really any players. I've heard of some guys, but I didn't really know anybody on the team. But I felt, from reading on the squad a little bit and talking with a few of the coaches, that we had a pretty good pitching staff. And I felt like if we could just score some runs, maybe we would just have a chance. The whole goal for me when I got into this was just to have the chance to go to Italy to be able to compete, to get into the Olympics. That was the goal. After that, everything was icing on the cake. But I spoke to Eric briefly. He was excited. And, he told me just to try to fit in. He told me to know my role on the team. He also told me to have some feel when it comes into the clubhouse. He didn't play.
What did that, Coach Eric? What did that mean? Have some feel? Because were you afraid that Danny was going to big time the teammates and looking, not going to be able to, deal with?
John, you just answered your own question. Absolutely. We had, you refer to us kind of as misfits. I don't know that that's the right term. We're kind of like the Oakland Raiders of baseball a little bit. Guys had a whole lot of different backgrounds, and what we did in Bulgaria and Lithuania was pretty amazing. We won 8 games, in a month's period or a 5-week period, and then all of a sudden, we have this superstar Danny Valencia, just showing up, and obviously he became part of the family, but it was pretty important. I just wanted to talk to him about a couple things and where he saw himself at this point of his career and how he could best help the team. And literally, after, I'd say the first 3 at-bats, he just kind of put the team on his back offensively, and we just kind of ran with him.
That's great. Jonathan DeMarty, let me ask you a question. I had the privilege of going to college with Theo Epstein, who was my college sports editor. And he's now obviously, just a fairly successful executive first with the Boston Red Sox and now with the Cubs. And he's obviously Jewish as well. Has he mentioned, has anybody from the Cubs or Theo specifically, have they given you any sort of, kind words or support on your journey here with Team Israel?
I have not had the opportunity to meet Theo, but when I worked out for the Cubs, I was able to throw for Josh Zaid, who's played for Team Israel before, and also Craig Breslow. So we've had numerous conversations about the successes of our team, kind of the road that we went through this fall. They asked a lot of questions about what happened in Bulgaria and Lithuania, because I think that was a little bit harder for everybody to follow along with. So I received a lot of support from the organization. And when I signed, one of the first things that they said was that I would still have the opportunity to play in the Olympics this summer and then again next summer, based on whatever happens. So I'm really fortunate to be a part of an organization that has been supportive of this and also has a pretty strong Jewish presence. And ironically, there was when I showed up my first day, one of the pitchers whose locker was right across from mine was the starting pitcher that we faced for Team Italy. So it's kind of crazy to see the whole European baseball come full circle.
Nate, let me ask you a question, because I would be remiss if I did not mention this. I saw you from the University of Rochester. My dad is from Rochester, New York, so he'll feel immediate kinship to you. But one of the jobs I think that you're tasked with is recruiting and sort of finding guys and probably working with Eric to get them into the fold. Tell us how you went about doing that, especially with so much uncertainty heading into next year. How are you keeping in touch with guys, and do you have to sort of keep a larger roster just in case?
Yeah, for sure. So that's honestly, it's probably something more directed towards Peter and Eric, because I know Peter and Eric are behind the scenes, really kind of the brainchilds behind the team. But I think in terms of maybe keeping in touch with guys, Moscott talked about it, and Holtzy talked about it, just kind of the team family atmosphere. I mean, it's very special, where even throughout the year, since the Olympic qualifiers, we've really, I think, all done a good job staying in touch with one another. Everybody's kind of off doing their own thing training wise. A lot of guys are still playing. Guys who maybe are currently not playing, they're training on their own. But Peter has set up weekly Zoom calls with the team where guys have been able to connect. And then I think it just really kept the vibe going in terms of just being motivated and keeping that eye on the prize, so to speak, for next summer. One thing that I'll just add, and Peter's talked about this in some of our Zoom calls, and I've talked to Holtz about this as well. It obviously stinks that there's been a delay in the Olympics. But the one thing I will say is that I think it kind of gives some more time just mentally to help prepare for it for all the players and coaches, and just kind of, gives that delayed gratification type deal where we have something to look forward to in the future to get really excited about. And, just to kind of build a greater following and tell our story a little bit longer. So I think there's some perks in this, unfortunately, being delayed, but obviously COVID has thrown the curveball. But then I guess, again, just to touch on the question you asked, I would throw that over to Peter, who's really built this team from the ground up.
John, the only issue that I have with what Coach Molberg said is it gives Peter a whole other year to guarantee a gold medal.
That's right, too.
I say gold. I said a medal.
And let me ask you,
guarantee a gold medal.
well, but on that front, because, I know this having, we're, our company, we're producing a series of documentaries with the International Olympic Committee, and we're doing one in particular about a Japanese subject. And I can tell you, just dealing with the folks in Japan and with the IOC, there's a lot of legitimate excitement about baseball coming back because it's in Japan and because it's a sport that they care about. And, obviously we all hope that they'll be able to have fans in the stands. I can tell you, if there are going to be fans in the stands at the Olympics, the baseball games will be packed because it's a huge priority for it was really a Japanese effort to put the games back into the Olympics. I went in 1984 when it was still an exhibition sport here in Los Angeles. I think it was Odeby McDowell and Rafael Palmeiro were on the U.S. team. I think Mark McGuire as well. And it was a very clear memory for me. Let me ask you this, give people a sense. I don't think, maybe this is best, Peter or Eric, what the competition right now looks like and who has still not qualified, and how that might change the stakes a little bit looking forward as going to 2021.
As I mentioned before, there are 4 teams that have qualified so far. Japan is the host team. We as the European African representative, 2 teams from the Premier 12, that they were Mexico and Korea. By the way, the Japanese team has already done 3 different television broadcasts from Israel about Team Israel, even though we have no players in Israel, or we have a few players in Israel, very few players in Israel, but they're very concerned about what's going on. So there's 2 more tournaments that have to be played probably in the beginning of 2021. One is the Americas tournament, which will have the US, Canada, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Colombia, fighting for 1 berth. Okay, 1 team will go up from there. And then the second and third place teams will then go to an international tournament, which will be in Taiwan, where those 2 teams will play, Taiwan, China, and the Netherlands, who came in second place in Europe. So from those 5 teams, there will be 1 team going up. And those are the last 2 teams.
Very interesting. So basically the U.S. still hasn't qualified. The Dominican, so Dominican, Cuba, and the U.S., only 2 of those are going to go. And that's pretty remarkable.
3 of them might go, because 3 teams might go. No, only 2 of them will go.
2, right? Yeah, yes. That's wild. Shlomo, let me ask you, as the native Israeli on the webinar and on the one of the natives on the squad, what did you make of all these guys coming in, taking spots on the Israeli team? Obviously, it's not really taking spots because it's really a part of all Olympic teams. There's a lot of foreign nationals who play for other teams on the Olympics. But, were you sort of the designated Israel whisperer about sort of telling people about the country and getting guys, sort of plugged in about what Israel means?
Well, I tried to be the missing link between the new players, the players that are part of the 2017 World Classic, and the kind of Israeli program as much as possible. I mean, I don't think I ever said it, but I kind of designated myself to break down Valencia, as I was sure he was going to big league all of us. And I was actually one of the first to kind of approach him on the bus, and I think breaking down that ice and that kind of really disconnect a little bit between what they expected, what they saw, what they heard and read about Israel baseball. So I think, very quick, and to what John and Danny said, I mean, the I would say the connection between the players from day one was really the big part of our success. And, on the trips, on the road trips to the games, especially in Italy and Germany, kind of all hovering around Danny like around a campfire hearing stories, horror stories from his rookie year. And also was, was good and fun. And I think was, again, a big part in the success. I mean, I think from day one, and that's true about with anyone you talk with from the 2012, 2017, and from this last fall, that connection between the players. I mean, you mentioned also the connection between Jews. I mean, one of the things that I kept hearing over the years playing with the American players that came abroad on the team was that they were always the one Jewish player in their high school, the one Jewish player on the team. And as an Israeli, Israelis forget a little bit that disconnect that Jews have in the United States, right? I mean, if you're in Israel, I was, grew up in Israel. I was surrounded with Israelis, with Jews. It wasn't a big deal, but for a lot of these players, everyone on the team is Jewish. They felt really part of it. So,
and it is different. I mentioned it a lot. It's not unusual, especially at the Olympics. You see, like Becky Hammond, who is an American female basketball player playing for Russia. You see guys playing, and it's clearly a strategic choice because, hey, they can play for a national team. Whereas obviously you guys all playing for Team Israel, there's a different kind of connection that I think, clearly translates in the spirit of the team. But Danny, let me ask you because, they've talked about it. I mean, how did this experience, just qualifying or being on this team, how does it compare with other milestones? I mean, you've obviously had quite a bit of success in baseball, getting called up, your first home run, what have you. How does this experience compare?
It's right up there at the top with anything else, really. I talk always a lot about playing in the College World Series, how that was so amazing. Playing the big leagues is great, but being an Olympian never really crossed my mind because of baseball being in and out of the Olympics so much. So it's, to me, one of the coolest things. It could possibly be the coolest environment that I ever play in. I definitely cherish it. I know that a lot of people are proud about it, proud, for us to be there. But to touch on kind of what Shlomo was saying, when you're playing Major League Baseball, there's very few guys in the league that are Jewish. So when you are a Jewish player, you know who each one of those guys were. This is the first time ever where we're all being put in the same dugout to go out there and compete. And that was really, really unique. And the conversations were never really about baseball when we're on the bus. It's very heady stuff we talked about. It was never like sport and shallow conversation. It was always, deep stuff. Very intelligent guys on our team. I mean, we have guys that work at Goldman Sachs. It's a completely different animal when we're all together. And I feel very proud to be part of these guys. I'm very thankful for guys like Shlomo who accepted me with open arms and make it a little easier for me when you really don't know anybody. So it's been really, really cool in that sense.
That's great. Eric, I love the story about that Jonathan DeMarty, basically played about 15 minutes from where you lived, and you had no idea, or you knew who he was, but you had no idea that he was Jewish. So tell us a little bit about how you guys connected.
Well, again, like anything in baseball, you always have mutual people involved in your life. And, I'm not going to say I was a stalker, but DeMarty was pretty good. He was a tremendous high school baseball player. He was a 2-time New York State Gatorade Player of the Year, and he was a year younger than my oldest son. So my older son was a pitcher, and John was a pitcher, and so I kind of followed his career. Not knowing who he was. I never even met him, but I used to read about him in the paper all the time. Molly and I, started getting friendly over the last couple of years, and just randomly one day he goes, you know DeMarty's Jewish, right? Now, with the name like DeMarty, you would think anything, but with a name like Valencia, you don't think Jewish right away. So, like a kid like Valencia, I took his bar mitzvah picture, and I keep that on my phone, John, just so you know. And then, see, he's embarrassed already. And then DeMarty, we'll let you know. I mean, his mom, pretty serious practicing Jew. Father is not. And as soon as we found out, we were kind of just made to go through this together.
That's
John,
great.
Since 2012, I'm searching among Jewish ball players because obviously for the WBC, we can have Jewish Americans who have heritage. Because of a heritage rule, they can play for the team. So when you look for the Cohens and the Levys and the Bernsteins, it's easy. But when you find a player like Ty Kelly, for example, who grew up in Texas and went to school in California, and happened to be at a minor league game, a single A game in Brooklyn, and saw two kids with yarmulkes signing autographs for them and said, hey guys, you remember, I'm also Jewish. And their father calling me and telling me, listen, Ty Kelly's also Jewish. You got to go after him. And talking to Ty, his mother's Jewish. And he came to Israel in 2017 together with these other guys. There was a famous movie called Heading Home. And they came to Israel. He came with his mother. Other guys came with their significant others, whoever they had there and everything. And it was just Sam Fold came with his father. It was a great experience. All these guys have been to Israel at least twice. They've all been on the fields. They've all, been with the kids and everything, given clinics. The kids are writing to them from Israel. They're corresponding with them. It's fantastic. Here's his bar mitzvah picture.
It's tremendous. Just a baseball question, because this has come up. It's been asked of me. I think when you guys qualified, I probably got a text or an email from every Jewish baseball fan I know, figuring that I'm following, and of course I was following as well. What is the quality of the baseball? I mean, in terms of some of the qualification tournaments, I mean, the World Baseball Classic, you're talking about, really the cream of the crop. But in terms of some of these Olympic baseball qualifiers, maybe John Moscat, Danny, you guys want to maybe take that one in terms of whether it's hitting, fielding. What has been your sense? Would you compare it to AA, AAA, independent ball, single A, college baseball? How would you describe it?
Danny, what do you want to do? You want to take it?
You got this, John. It's all you, man.
Well, first and foremost, we weren't there in Bulgaria. Heard that there was some very, very varying levels of play there in the qualifiers, where you might have a team that matches up to a AA team, and you might have a team that might be not hosting a field against a college team, right? So when we got out to the qualifiers in Germany, and we're in the European Championship, and then the qualifier in Italy, I think the level of play escalated, right? We started in Germany, started against some teams that ranged maybe from, I would say between single A to AA level, with the Netherlands and some of the better teams being a AAA borderline big league team, like with some of the guys on the back end of their careers, with some older players that maybe have 8-9 years of big league time that are just kind of on the backside. So competition was for me going out there. It was the first time playing in like 2 years due to injury. I was shocked. I was not expecting there to be guys throwing above 85. I don't know what I thought about European baseball, but I mean, there were guys that were pumping. There were some guys that could throw it. There were some guys that could swing it. You got your couple players in the lineup that you don't want to miss with. You got your big arm that you kind of want to avoid on that certain day. And we obviously got every one of those guys when they knew that they were playing up against us, because they knew that they had a challenge in Israel. And so pleasantly surprised at how good it was. And I think as we look to the Olympics, we know we're in this thing, right? This is the best. This is the cream of the crop. So these lineups are going to be stacked. These pitching staffs are going to be stacked. So we want to come with our best too.
And I'm assuming there wasn't a whole lot of like advanced analytics on the Lithuanian baseball team prior, like a lot of scouting. So I mean, just in terms of from a managerial or even just like as players, did you actually watch all the games just to have a sense? Because I'm sure there wasn't a whole lot of advanced tape on these guys.
We had a guy like Alex Jacobs, who's a coach of ours, who kind of did our advanced scouting. He'd send us video of the pitcher that we may be facing. And I think, John and Shlomo, and both Johns can talk on it, but I think that he probably would send them videos on their hitters as well to get them prepared. We did everything we could to put ourselves in a position to be successful, and with all the resources we have. It's tough enough fielding a team like ours, considering we're all over the world. So we did a pretty good job of maximizing our resources. That's for sure.
John, just to add something to that, I mean, on paper we were much better than every other team in the B pool. The problem is that a lot of these teams don't have the same baseball tradition as, you know, the kids get in America. So what you see is really the approach and how they play baseball is really completely different. Anywhere from the approach on pitching backwards to how they hit, what they're trying to do. They're not trying to power, they're trying to kind of make contact. So even though on paper we should have ran through every single team, there are a lot of teams over there that made it very hard on us. And that's, I think, traditionally why we've had some hard problems getting past the B pool, is because the kind of really different mentality and approach to the game, but also the same advantage that we had as far as, you know, getting together and wearing the flag in the back of our shirt. That's true about every other team. So I think, you know, like baseball, it's really any given day. I mean, I could go back to the B pool, and there are at least 2 games against Russia that we could have easily lost and never made it. And I'm talking about being down by 3 runs in the 9th inning and some weird pitching change because the coach was, you know, they don't have the same kind of bright minds that we did. Made some weird call and some weird throw that would have never been done by anyone else. And before you know, we're winning an extra inning. So, you know, that's part of the beauty of baseball, right? I mean, you have one good pitcher kind of shut you down, and it happens to be the last game of a tournament, and we're not making it to where we did.
And John, I was just going to add one thing
go ahead,
to that. To kind of what Valencia said, and then Shlomo. So baseball is an unpredictable game, so it's impossible to predict. I was the lucky guy who got to room with Alex Jacobs during the 2 to 3 weeks we're in Europe, and I learned a ton from him. So Alex Jacobs, who's not on this call, he's an advanced scout, you know, in Major League Baseball, and I can't tell you how impressed and amazed I was watching him work. I wanted to learn from him because I've never worked in the scouting realm. So I would literally sit there while he was doing some of his scouting reports. And we're talking, we get back from a game some nights, 8, 9 p.m. He's up till 1 in the morning watching various videos of players and other teams just to figure something out, just to give the guys something to base anything off of. Now, not everybody would always want to utilize those scouting reports, which I'm sure is normal. I know where I coach at the college game, some guys don't want that, but a lot of the guys did use it. And so, again, we just made the best of it, and Alex Jacob just really worked his butt off to make that happen.
I mentioned, you know, the 2000 U.S. team, and I mentioned Doug Minkiewicz just because he was a guy whose career was sort of in the balance, you know, in Major League Baseball, and really used that as a springboard to get back into the game. And I'm wondering, you know, from Jonathan DeMarty, John Moscott, Danny, you know, where are you now in sort of in your baseball journey? Obviously, we know you're going to be part of Team Israel, but, you know, in terms of just give us maybe a sense of where you are and maybe what you're hoping to get out of this and maybe be a springboard professionally. I'll let you, John Moscow, I'll look at you first.
So to be completely transparent, I went into the European qualifiers with 0 expectations. And I think everybody in the room kind of knew that for me. The first day I got there, I was like, hey guys, I just hope that I can help, you know? Cause I know that if I'm healthy, I'm going to be helped. But I didn't know that I would be healthy. So I've put a lot of work in on this side to kind of remain healthy. And I'll be honest, looking at the Olympics, if we go out there and I go out there and I'm who I was a couple of years ago with the velocity and the health, like I'm looking at, you know, staying in the game, right? I mean, who I am now is a different person than who I was, you know, 10 months ago. So it's exciting for me because it is the biggest platform in the world and it's a springboard potentially. So, you know, I want to use it. And I think it'll be great.
Danny, what about you?
You know, I think that I'd be lying if I said anything other than the fact that I think playing the Olympics is probably going to be the icing on the cake of my long career. But I had no expectations going in, and I'm going to play just as hard for, you know, our team as I did on any playoff game that I played in the big leagues or whatever it be, just because of guys that are on the team. You know, John Moscow was willing to blow out his arm for us to, you know, have a chance to win a game and say, hey, I'll lose my arm for us to have a chance to win, for our team to, you know, to advance. And when you have guys on your team that are willing to do things like that, it's hard not to support those guys and come out there as prepared as possible and go as hard as we possibly could, you know. And, you know, same thing with our head coach. Eric Holtz is the same type of guy, you know. It's hard not to want to play hard for him. And we all want to look good, obviously, but we also want to make these guys look good and everybody else that watches and follows our team very, very proud.
John, this is the type of stuff, and I don't mean to embarrass anybody here, but this is the type of stuff that you just can't understand because you weren't there. And one night I text Muscat in his room and I said, "Hey, John, I got you in relief tomorrow. I'm a big communication guy. I like the guys to know where they stand, what their roles are going to be." And Muscat said, "Hey, Holtz, can I come down and talk to you?" And he came down and literally, I'm not going to say melancholy, but there was a little glaze in his eye. And he said, "This may be the last time I ever step on a field. I don't want to waste it in relief. I want the Netherlands. I want the last bullets that I'm holding in my chamber to be for Team Israel in a meaningful game. I want to give you everything I got." And, you know, how do you say no to a guy like that and a gamer? And all he did was take the ball and you know, really shove that day. And I think he threw 4 2/3 and left the game up 4 or 5-1. And we go on to beat, you know, the European champion Netherlands. Every guy that we have, every coach that we have, John DeMarty at this point in his career is kind of I'm going to use him as a late middle relief closer type guy. They're usually prima donnas. They usually only want to throw an inning here and there. In a big spot, John DeMarty wants the ball every day that he can get the ball in his hand. Shlomo wants the ball every day. Danny Valencia wants to be up in every big spot that we have. And that was why this team was so successful. There was no ego. There was no I. We were just in this together. And I've coached a lot of baseball. I played a lot of baseball. I still play baseball. Just something special about these guys. Something special about this team. Something special about the blue and white. And, you know, Peter and the board of Israel did a great job putting this together. And we just kind of ran with the ball from there.
This is it's incredible what these guys are saying now. And, you know, in the WBC in 2017, 2016, 2017, we had the bench on the bench. And that was one guy who was a bench on the bench. There was a doll who was a bench on the bench. This team has 24 benches on the bench. And this team is really made of benches, and they're incredible. That's why I love them all.
That's great. I know we're running a little short of time, and we have some audience questions. I guess I'll just turn it over to Tammy for that.
Yeah, and I think John, well, maybe just 1 or 2 questions because we don't have time, but it's an amazing spot to be in where there's so much interest and so much requests. So John, the most interesting question you have, and then we'll see if we have time for a second.
This is from our list of.
Sorry, John Goldman.
Oh, John Goldman. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
We got like 4 Johns here.
Yeah, you make it easy on us, you know. Some names
I know
are
lots of
complicated.
Johns in the chat. So here's one to Shlomo. As an Israeli, how do you get involved?
Wait, they're all Israelis.
Sorry, as
a Sabra.
As a native-born Israeli, what was your path to getting involved in baseball? What were the steps you took along the years, and what was your journey to getting into it?
I was 7 when I visited my uncle in New York, who took me to a Met game in 1986 and really kind of got me the bug.
Good year to be a Mets fan.
Good year, yeah. And then got back to school. I was in 2nd grade. I was asking my best friend who was sitting next to me if he ever heard of the game of baseball. He's like, yeah, my dad plays softball. The first team in Tel Aviv was basically his dad and a bunch of girls and boys from my class. It then turned out to be, there were a couple of hubs, a hub in Jerusalem, a hub in Moshav Tzofit, one in Ra'anana. And within 3 years, we kind of sent our first national team to the Low League World Series qualifiers in Ramstein, Germany. And ever since, I've really kind of, you know, it was weird. You know, I never had the fixation to play in the big leagues because I think I was never exposed. But once a week, watching a baseball game pre-recorded on the Lebanese TV channel, taking the antenna, to having friends and family sending baseball cards, and then really contemplating never, not even going to the Army and trying to pursue my dream of playing baseball in the States. I happened to be also the first one who got the Israeli Sportai Mitztayen, which is the outstanding athlete program that allowed me to continue playing baseball throughout my military service. And while most post-military folks go and travel in South America and India, within 4 days of me finishing my military service, I walked on Mesa College in San Diego and then got a scholarship at UC San Diego. So really just, I mean, when I left, Peter talked about the 2007 Pro League. When I came and joined the team halfway through the season because I was recovering from shoulder surgery, that was the first time that Israel ever had a mound. I mean, just to give you some background, I would be practicing flat ground pitching, and then the one time a year that we would be pitching off the mound was during the European Championship. So I've seen it all. I can't be more excited and proud of what kind of Israel has built and the following that we've been getting from all over the world, and players coming in baseball being a kind of on the map, so to speak. And I'm just here for the ride. It just happens to be a 30-year ride.
Wow.
Lomo's been on over 30 national teams, including the first national team that I took overseas. He was the manager. He was the head coach. He was an 18-year-old guy in the Army, and we took a team of 12-year-olds overseas. Another of those guys are on the team as well, Alon Leishman.
Peter's long-term plan for me is to stuff me eventually, and I'll become the mensch on the bench.
Well, now that we know the long-term plans, and I really want to keep the timetable, and I think your answer, the question actually, and your answer, I think really gives the feel of the team and the spirit. So maybe we'll stop there. The other questions that we got from the many participants, we'll figure out with Peter Kurtz and Danny Grossman, who've been helpful, I think, from the moment, we said go. We'll figure out how to answer everybody, and we'll find out how to get the answers answered, because I want to keep, like in sports, we have to keep times and schedules and be prompt.
Extra
innings.
I had one question.
It's not cricket. Yeah.
Yeah, I had one question, and I don't know if for the players or for Peter or for Eric. Literally, what is the timetable? I mean, assuming everything went, God willing, okay, and the Olympics go on as scheduled, what is your timetable? Are you going to have like some workouts in Tel Aviv? What's the program?
We'll be together next June in New York. We'll go all over the Northeast, playing a bunch of different minor league teams. But basically, our entire schedule has just been fast forwarded 1 year.
So everybody, in other words, you will not get together as a team until basically about 8 weeks or 7 weeks before the Olympics.
We're looking to do a few things. We might be in spring training, doing a couple of exhibition games against teams in spring training. And also in May, we're looking to have a mini camp. But the main camp that Eric was talking about will be 2.5 weeks before the Olympics in the Northeast, from probably about the 10th of July until the 22nd of July.
Well, if you're going to make a stop in Southern California on the way to Japan, happy to see you guys off.
Or in DC.
It's a long flight from New York to Tokyo.
There's a lot of people that are behind the scenes on our whole entire operation that aren't here right now that should, get some recognition. I know Adam Gladstone is a guy that's worked tirelessly on our on what we're trying to accomplish when it comes to mini camps and equipment and stuff. I know that Maccabi USA has been a great partner, so is the JNF, and I think being able to thank those people is very, very important. The ambassador for having us, getting us on this platform. It shouldn't go unnoticed that this whole operation is really fundraised. It's done on donor dollars, and baseball, as we all know, is a very expensive game, especially when we have players all around the world on our team. So all the resources we use to, help, make our team as best as possible and help make the experience as best as possible as we prepare to, go win a gold medal. And we need, a lot of support. Unfortunately, it costs money, and, everything is welcome here. That's for sure. And I think other guys, one thing that we haven't really mentioned also is what we all go through when we're out there. That shouldn't get lost either. The security checks that we go through, people, lose track that we were the first team in a very long time to go into Germany and play. And it's very important to know that we're out there, facing, anti-Semitism is still a thing. It's a real thing, and we all experience that. And we're out there combating that, representing the country, and there's marks on our backs. And I think that's another thing that goes unnoticed, that we do that, and we're glad to do it, and we think it's fantastic, but it comes at a risk too. We'd all be, naive to think that it doesn't. But there's a lot of great things going on behind the scenes that not everybody can get the recognition at this very moment, but we can't lose fact that there's a lot of people helping.
Absolutely. I think there's a whole country behind you, and you're facing great difficulties with the pandemic, and definitely with anti-Semitism that's growing. And it's a lot of good and a lot of empowerment, but also a lot of risk. And it's amazing that you all are doing it. And definitely Maccabi USA, the Maccabiah USA and JNF are putting a lot of efforts and money and funding into it. And so exactly as you mentioned, private donors and enthusiasts and people who are fans. And as the ambassador said, the more you succeed, the more fans you will get. And we're definitely, on Team Israel. And we'll do what we can, to be in touch with you. And John DeMarty and Nate Mulberg were at the embassy, and we'll hopefully see more and more of you. And we're really looking forward. I think it's an amazing, empowering, strengthening story. And it's one of those things that, American Jews, Jews from all over the world, and definitely Israeli Jews, you're doing good for us all. And you're doing good also within Israel, within different communities, like Peter said, with Muslim Israelis and Jewish Israelis. And I think it's amazing. And we can just all hope that it will continue and happen next year. And John Weinbach, thank you so much for being our moderator and, working with us. It was amazing.
Tom, when we win gold, you're going to be making a documentary, 30 for 30. It's going on ESPN, right?
Yeah, no, it's just going to be, I'm trying to think what will be like a Hebrew baseball world if it's not The Last Dance.
No, and it's not Cool Runnings that was mentioned by Peter. And we'll have to think of like Shalom Base or something, like for home base. So Shalom Base, or we'll figure it out.
The name's the easy part. The name's the easy part. But nothing would make me more psyched than to have this project.
It's an amazing story.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, and thank you all so much, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank
in person.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tammy.
Appreciate everybody for watching.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.